Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for your time today, and it's absolutely an honor to stand in the House and speak to this motion. And I'd like to start off my remarks by first and foremost thanking and congratulating all of the wonderful security staff that we have here on Parliament Hill, particularly in light of the events on October 22nd. But Mr. Speaker, when I reflect back on my first days here in Parliament in 2011, I remember how remarkable it was and how impressed I was when I arrived, how quickly each one of them knew us personally and individually, and how friendly and how responsive they were, how supportive they were. And since that time, in just a few short years, many of us have had come to know each other on first-name basis. We've had wonderful chats about family and friends, our interests and hobbies in the regions of the country in which we come. And I think what's important about that, Mr. Speaker, is because at the basis of any great security system and organization are the people behind it and the people they serve. And I can tell you that I know not only do they serve us well because of that personal connection and that time that they give to us, but they do that for Canadians that we invite here each and every day, 365 days a year. And we need to be able to maintain that, Mr. Speaker, and we need to support them in the job that they do in that regard. And I've always been very impressed with how they've put such a personal emphasis and personal energy into the work that they do, and invariably beyond many of the other things that we can provide in terms of tangible security features, be those equipment or training or operational strategies. It's the personality and the personal effort and energy that they put toward it and understanding the client base in which they serve that is probably the single biggest factor in determining everybody's security here on Parliament Hill. And for that, I thank them. And of course, since October 22nd, a day none of us will soon forget, I've noticed the continued vigilance of our security services here on the Hill and across the parliamentary precinct. Today's motion speaks to the integration of services now. And it was mentioned earlier in debate that on Parliament Hill and the parliamentary precinct, and in fact within approximately 150 meters of Parliament Hill, we have 5 different security or police agencies. That's the House of Commons Security, Senate Security, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Ottawa Police, and of course some level of jurisdiction extended to the Ontario Provincial Police right in this region. So that leaves 5, of course 4 predominantly. We want to make sure that those services integrated are working well together. And indeed, they've performed that function for many events, many times, for many, many years, and will continue to do so well into the future. I need to stress, of course, that this motion, which is well outlined, is very, very clear about a couple of things. The motion speaks about integration. It does not speak about replacement. This, in no means and by no way, will replace the dedicated men and women that serve us here in this building and in many of the other buildings across the parliamentary precinct. It's about making sure that the services that are here, that the men and women in uniform, be that House of Commons, security, police servicing here, or the men and women in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police uniform, are able to function together, communicate together, and work together effectively. It's my opinion, Mr. Speaker, that not only do we owe this to Canadians in the sense that they expect us to have a secure, safe, and focused government, able to do the business that Canadians expect us to do, free from fear of threat, free from fear of being interrupted with violence. They also expect us, and we have a responsibility, to make sure that we're able to protect and serve people that we invite here every day. Mr. Speaker, I also believe that we owe this to the men and women in uniform. We have a responsibility to make sure that whatever systems and services in terms of the security delivery here on the Hill, across the parliamentary precinct, and on the grounds of Parliament Hill, that we owe it to them to make sure that they have the best and integrated system possible so that they're not in jeopardy, so that they're not at greater risk, so that the surprises don't arrive on their doorstep unknown to them, that they have the longest and greatest opportunity to anticipate, prevent, and deal with any threat of any level, any crisis that arrives on our doorstep. And it's not just threat from violence. Emergency situations and crises don't just boil down to times where, as we saw on October 22nd, armed people stormed Parliament Hill. It's about occasions that we can't always anticipate. Fire, earthquakes, other emergency-related events, medical emergencies that occur, mass casualties, crowds, protests. Not always highly dramatic and highly dangerous situations, but serious situations that can occur in any security environment, especially here on the Hill. And we have a responsibility, of course, to make sure that all services that exist in and around the parliamentary precinct are able to deal with all of those security events. Mr. Speaker, for continued access and safety of all Canadians, that is another reason that we need to make sure services are integrated to the greatest and most effective level. Canadians, of course, have said to us loud and clear that after the events of October 22nd, that they still wanted access to Parliament Hill. It's still a very important part of Canadians' fundamental belief is being able to have free and relatively uninterrupted access to this place, to our Hill. And we've provided that for them. We haven't overreacted. We've been, I think, very focused on the objectives that we have and understanding the threats we faced on that day and the threats that we can continue to face. And as I mentioned, again, not just from encounters that are directed with violence, but any other emergency situation that could occur here. We owe it to those people to make sure that our security systems are sound, that provide the confidence to those of us who work here, parliamentarians, support service staff, security staff, and to our guests, that those systems we have confidence in, that we can maintain as best we can that free and clear access to Parliament Hill and to Canada's Parliament. The precinct, of course, Mr. Speaker, is larger than the House of Commons itself, and I listened a lot to the debate this morning, and a lot of focus was on the events of October 22nd, leading up the pathway of the Parliament grounds in through the front doors of this place. And we spoke a lot about the impact of the security services and the relationship between the RCMP and our internal security services right here on the Hill, right here in Centre Block. But of course, the parliamentary precinct stretches from the Supreme Court all the way over to East Block. It's a large precinct. And in between that are open grounds that are monitored and managed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. There's transportation systems that occur here. Parliamentarians move freely in and out of buildings. We move in and out of security jurisdictions, as it were. We move in and out of silos. We move in and out of communication systems. We move in and out of operational strategies that differ. Right. We move in and out of different uniforms and different protocols. And it only makes sense, Mr. Speaker, that we merge those protocols and procedures and integrate them in a manner that makes sense. That makes sense so that there's a common thread and a common flow to them, while at the same time, as this motion clearly indicates, respecting the clear independence of the respective houses, and of course ensuring, which is absolutely critical to every member in this House I know, that the positions are protected for the men and women who have done such a great job, not just on October 22nd, which we've made a great deal of, and rightfully so, but for the great job that we've watched them do every day since I've been here, since the day we arrived, since the day I walked in, and I know I'm not a remarkable-looking person, Mr. Speaker, but I can tell you, I walked in the door, I'll never forget this, I walked in the door of La Promenade, and I was amazed at how quickly one of the security staff said, "Mr. Leaf, come on in right this way." I couldn't believe. I said, "How the heck do you know me? I just got here." But again, as it went back to my introductory remarks, how well they know their client base, how well they know their people. And Mr. Speaker, when we start to integrate that and we make sure that every security service on this Hill does that job equally, knows that, and puts the same level of interest and intent and focus into the job that they have here, we're all going to be that much safer for it. We're going to be that much more confident in what we do. We're all going to be able to focus on the task at hand, and we're all going to be able to feel tremendous support and confidence for the people that we invite here. And we're going to know that each and every day we're doing the right things for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to talk quickly about the value of integration. And I have some experience in this field. I'm a former member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I've had a 20-year career in law enforcement that's been very diversified, from safer community neighborhoods to corrections to park law enforcement, conservation law enforcement, and private sector security. So I understand the nature of security silos. I understand the nature of security and policing and the commonalities between the two, the synergies between the two, and the differences between the two. And I'm going to give you just a quick example that I think will help illustrate a bit of the point in terms of the importance of making sure we have integrated security services. It's not unique. This idea is, and we're not cutting new ground here. This is done all over the country for a whole host of reasons. Now, I had one occasion where I was hired as a contractor to run the security services for the Canada Winter Games in 2007 in the Yukon. And it was a private firm that ran that security contract for 90 security employees. Of course, we had hundreds of other volunteer security that were working outside of the mandate and the operational control of that company. And then we had the city, which is served by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, responsible for the entire venue, emergency response, and coordination of different volunteer and paid security forces, the different venues, from athlete villages to athlete sites to celebration grounds and opening ceremony grounds. Mr. Speaker, at that time, had we established our own silos and said, this is our job and this is our mandate and this is what we do, and the volunteer force said, this is our job and this is our mandate and this is what we do, and the RCMP said, this is our job and this is our mandate and this is what we do, we wouldn't have been able to keep the athletes and the visitors that we invited there safe. Not only that, we wouldn't have been able to have those games go off with such success, because security is the corner piece to everybody being able to enjoy what they do and focus on the task at hand, focus on their athleticism, focus on the enjoyment as a spectator and as a fan. So what did we do? Of course, the RCMP took the lead, despite the fact that they didn't have a primary mandate of dealing with the athletes' village security, where the company I was working for did. But we made sure we integrated our communications. We met nightly to talk about events of the day. We had briefings. So this is what integration means: integration of communication, integration of coordination of roles and clearly defined roles, joint training, which is of tremendous benefit to everybody and will be a tremendous benefit here, joint briefings, information sharing, intelligence sharing, established chains of command and reporting, and interoperability with systems, with tools, and equipment. And that is obviously very important when you have multiple security forces and police forces working together. Interoperability is so important, particularly with communication systems, but with tools and with your training ability. We saw a response here on October 22nd where different tools that wouldn't have otherwise been used by services here are being brought into this place. It's important. It's not just important, it's critical that the men and women working here know what those tools are, how to use them, how to work them, how to integrate with them. We've denied them of that opportunity thus far. This is now that opportunity to make sure that we're giving them the introduction to those tools, to those systems, to those procedures, giving them the breadth of tools and operating abilities that the RCMP have. We're going to open a field of opportunity for them, a field of training, a field of knowledge that's only going to make them better at what they do. And they're already tremendous at what they do, Mr. Speaker. These kind of opportunities we took advantage of, obviously, in the integration of systems when I worked the Canada Winter Games. And when we did that, we brought all those forces together. There was no power struggle. There was no you're better than us, we're better than you. It wasn't about that. And it's not about that here. It was about making sure that we were able to put those kind of discussions aside for the ultimate task at hand, which was the safety and security of our clients, the safety and security of the fans and the spectators and the athletes, and the successful delivery of a wonderful set of games in our territory. And that, of course, is not unique across this country. It goes on all the time. That happens at all kinds of major events, organizations. It happens at the municipal level in different policing and security environments. So as I said, Mr. Speaker, we're not cutting new ground with this. In fact, in a parliamentary example, Australia and the United Kingdom have already gone down this road. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that example that I gave with the Canada Winter Games in 2007 isn't the only example that I've had where we've integrated services, where we've ensured that one agency is able to work with and talk with and train with and communicate with another. Done that throughout my entire career, whether that was with parks or whether that was with conservation law enforcement, or whether when I was in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, reaching out to community groups and partnerships, form those partnerships and make sure that what we were doing was always in the best interest of the client base that we served, and not at all a discussion about one agency or one organization having greater control, greater responsibility, being better than the other. Because as soon as discussions go down that road, we forget the main focus that we have, the main task at hand, our primary mandate, which is to ensure the effective operation of government here on behalf of the Canadian people. I'm not asking for integration, Mr. Speaker, for my personal safety and security. I'm asking for integration more than anything for the safety and security of the dedicated men and women, be those RCMP or be those House of Commons security, so that they're safe and that they're effective, and that when they at the front lines are confronted with any kind of emergency, be that violent threat or be that medical emergency or be that an act of God and a natural disaster, that I can sleep well at night knowing that we've given them the tools to do their jobs right, and that we haven't denied them that because we're worried about how it's going to be taken as one looking better than the other. And I'll stress again, Mr. Speaker, this motion has absolutely nothing to do with quality of service of one organization over another. And we cannot allow ourselves in this House to be drawn into that kind of debate, because that is not the case. This is 100% about making sure that we fulfill our responsibilities as a government, to abandon any tradition that is kept us in the dark ages from ensuring that Canadians are safe, that the men and women that work here are safe, that the people that we invite here are safe, and that the primary focus of this House can be the task at hand, which is not focusing on threats coming through our door, but focusing on threats that are coming from overseas to our shores, and that we can focus on daily Canadian business with the confidence that the men and women here that are serving to protect us are protected, and they'll be able to do that, just a perfect job at that, so we can get to the orders of the day and the business of the day, and with pride, confidence, and comfort in our security, that we are not interrupted and that we are not affected by the events that are troubling North America and indeed the globe, and any other event that could arise here, and that Canadians rest assured, day in and day out, we are here in our House. And I'll conclude with this, Mr. Speaker, to the men and women that work in this place each and every day. Thank you for what you do. We know what you give up to be here. We know what you've risked in the past and will so in the future. And for that, we thank you, and we look forward to giving you all the tools you need to do your job right for Canadians.